This is Transformation Ground Control, your source for all things business, technology, strategy, and change. If you're growing your business, leading change within your organization, or undertaking any sort of operational or technology change initiative, this podcast is for you. This show covers what you need to know about digital transformation, organizational change, operational improvement, and business growth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 31, with new episodes every Wednesday on YouTube and all the usual audio podcast platforms, so be sure to subscribe to us wherever you're listening or watching. I'm here with Kyler Cheatham. Kyler, welcome to the show, as always.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here, glad to have the audience here listening in, and for informational purposes, we are going to have a great episode for you today. We have a special guest later in the show. We're going to have Kameron Carpenter, who is a senior consultant at Third Stage Consulting. We're going to talk to him about something a little bit different that we haven't really covered a lot on the show yet, but it's more about how to become a good consultant. You know, what are some of the lessons and pros and cons of being a consultant? What has his experience been as a consultant at Third Stage? He's been with the company now for over 2 years and started off without a whole lot of experience prior to coming to Third Stage. So I really wanted to walk through later in the show when we have him on. I wanted to walk through the journey that he's been through in terms of just getting up to speed. How did he adapt? What does he like about it? What doesn't he like? What are some of the traits that are important to a good consultant? And I think this is going to be relevant for anyone who's obviously in the consulting industry, but I think even for people that are either contemplating maybe someday becoming a consultant, or if you hire consultants as part of your organization, it'll be an interesting conversation just to give you sort of a behind-the-scenes glimpse of what it's like being a consultant, especially for someone who's adapting and adjusting and getting up to speed in the world of consulting. So we'll have him on the show later today. We'll also do a debrief of that discussion later on. Kyler and I will sort of unpack some of the things that Kameron and I talk about. But before we get to our guest today, we wanted to, for people that maybe have been on summer break, maybe they haven't been listening to all the podcasts all summer that we've had, there's been a lot of news and a lot of stuff that's happened in the digital transformation and enterprise technology space over the last few weeks. So we thought we'd do sort of a rundown of some of the headline stories that are relevant to today's environment. So Kyler, why don't you kick us off? What are some of the headlines or the stories that you're seeing in the media and in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of hot topics out there. I think this is an interesting catalog of subjects we'll cover here in the beginning because we've talked about all of them before. So a little bit kind of an update on what's happening or any developments in that narrative. So let's start with ransomware. And we know Accenture actually has been victim of a ransomware attack that happened. And I wondered if where we could start here in knowing that these big companies are getting hit, the bigger kind of consulting firms, what would they be looking for? Can you help us understand, like, why would you hit a global consulting firm as opposed to obviously like the Colonial Pipeline and different financial firms? It's pretty clear, at least the person can kind of deduce what they might be looking for. But with Accenture, knowing that they are within the ERP industry and you know them well, what would they be looking for as far as data or value in doing a ransomware attack? Is it just kind of the money and they feel like they can pay it, or what kind of insight can you provide?
Well, just as a disclaimer, I am not a hacker, so I can't tell you with 100% certainty why someone might want to hack anyone, especially Accenture. But what I would suspect, if I had to guess, I would think that Accenture is such a big, well-known company that has a lot of high-profile clients that would be a ripe target for a hacker because they have a lot to lose by having some sort of breach. And, they're a big enough organization that they might have the resources to pay you off to let them have their privacy and all their data and everything back. And that's usually why they do it, is to get some kind of money or extract some kind of money out of a company like Accenture. So big name, a lot of people know of them, a lot of clients know of them, so they have a lot to lose by having a security breach. So I suspect it's just they're ripe for someone that's probably more willing to pay up big bucks to a ransom type of situation than a smaller organization that no one's ever heard of. I suppose their secondary reason could be that they've got all this information and data, presumably in their internal systems and internal data that is relevant to all their different clients, which are some of the biggest, highest profile companies in the world. I don't know if that's sort of a secondary reason, or maybe that's the main reason. I don't know. But those are a couple reasons I could think of. If I try to put myself in the shoes of a potential hacker, why would that be?
Well, if you are a hacker and please just let us know, in the comments on this episode.
Right.
But so it sounds like, they were attacked by the Lockbit ransomware gang. And I think it's interesting kind of the parallels between actual gang mentality or mob mentality and these ransomware attackers. So I know Microsoft specifically, I think we said it was pronounced Azure, right? Their ransomware software.
Oh no, don't! I knew you were going to
I
ask
know
me
we're
that.
back here again. We still don't know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Azure. Is it
Okay.
Azure or Azure? We had the same conversation before, and I can never remember. So
Yeah.
hopefully everyone knows who
Yeah.
we're talking about. Azure is how you spell it.
But they have some new ransomware detection features that they are unveiling in the industry that shows kind of stages and specific timelines or red flags of a potential ransomware activities. And I'm wondering if you think that this could be kind of a trend in the software industry of coming out with these new kind of ransomware, not only software pieces, but also just overall process pieces, because I see that there could be an opportunity for a company to come in and teach you how to get out of a ransomware attack, right? Because all of a sudden you're held up by $45 million and the government is saying, please don't pay them. And you're like, okay, well, are you going to pay them? Because we
Right.
got to get back online here. So I'm wondering if you think that might be a trend or almost like an industry service line that might kind of evolve in the coming future.
I do, and I do think it's a trend that's evolving, and it's a smart thing to do. It's a smart play on Microsoft's part, not only because cybersecurity is such a big deal and it's so high profile now. It's like you said, the Colonial Pipeline and Accenture and other big companies getting hacked or having some sort of ransomware situation, but also because one of the hesitations that you'd be surprised at how many CIOs and IT departments still have these hesitations about moving to the cloud, and so. There's a perception that I'm going to lose control if I let Azure or any other cloud provider host my data and my applications. I'm losing a bit of control, or it may feel like I'm losing control. And what if Microsoft gets hacked, or what if something happens that I can't control? So that's largely that's still a problem with cloud adoption, is that perception. I tend to counter that perception, by the way, with the fact that Microsoft probably has more resources than you do, no matter who you are and what IT department you might work for. They probably have more resources to help mitigate against that risk, so that you're probably better off having a bunch of pros there watching, the situation 24/7. So I think it is something that should help. I would think it would help with cloud adoption, or it would help alleviate the fears of, if I move to Azure or AWS or one of these big cloud providers, what if they get hacked? And so this is, I think, a good way to mitigate some of that risk. And it's also, you look at the dollars and cents of how much money organizations are losing through these hacks and ransomware and cybersecurity breaches and all that stuff. And it's a lot of money. So it's probably money well spent for a lot of organizations to look at cybersecurity options like this. And it should be part of your digital strategy and digital roadmap going forward. It shouldn't just be focused on applications or data or integration. It should also be focused on cybersecurity as well.
Right, definitely. And if anyone is looking for more information on this, we have on the Third Stage YouTube channel from our recent Stratosphere, Daryl Crockett, who is our cybersecurity expert here at Third Stage, and then also Marcus Harris from a contracting standpoint. He's our partner at TAF Law. They have a great session. So if you head over onto the YouTube channel, you can watch that for more kind of granular information. But, speaking of transformations and digital strategy, Tesla did something interesting on another topic that we've discussed, which is the chip shortage. So basically, they created new innovation to start to make their own chips, as opposed to relying on foreign chip manufacturers to give them kind of that technology. And we know here that Tesla actually has their headquarters in Texas here, in the States. So in looking towards that, I wonder if I don't know if you have expertise here, Eric, but taking us through kind of when you're in that type of supply chain shortage, if you will, knowing that Tesla obviously has the means to develop something and do some R&D around chip research. But what are some best practices that a company of any size can do if they have a supply chain shortage, specifically with a certain part or vendor or something like that they can kind of get through that blockchain?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few things. I mean, first of all, having visibility and understanding to what is going on in your supply chain. I think that's one of the big problems that organizations are facing right now in the last year and a half, is that with some of these supply chain disruptions and shortages and whatnot, it's exposed the weaknesses of many supply chains. And by weakness, I mean, it's not just that you don't have the right vendors or the right supply chain strategy necessarily. It's that you just can't track, who your vendors are, or what's your prioritization of the vendors, and where where are your risks within the supply chain. So there's a lot of technology out there now that is focusing not just on automating the supply chain, but helping you more proactively address the supply chain. So I think that's one thing, is just making sure you've got the right, technology and processes and organization to support this new era of supply chain management that we're entering. So I apologize. Now I lost track of your question. I don't know if I answered it, but I was going down a rabbit hole of supply chain technology. But is that what you were asking, or is that something different?
Yeah. So basically, you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, that my question is, how can our listeners or company members or business owners help get through supply chain shortage? We've seen it not only obviously Tesla and the global chip shortage, but on more of kind of a granular level. What can you do if there's a vendor that you're utilizing, you can't get the specific parts, or what kind of controllables do you have in that situation? It sounds like if you invest in that automation based off your answer, that can help foresee or kind of foreshadow a potential issue in demand or overall supply chain optimization, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with that keyword you mentioned, which is demand. I mean, if you know and have a good handle on what your demand is, then you're going to be more likely to be able to plan your supply chain and execute accordingly. I think the problem with a lot of organizations is they don't anticipate demand well. They might have the best, the most finely tuned supply chain to support it, but if you can't accurately predict demand or forecast demand, then it doesn't matter how well you execute your supply chain, because it's going to be based on a faulty assumption. So I think having a good handle on what your demand is, which is very difficult right now, admittedly, because you have literally every client we work with, I feel like, is somehow directly or indirectly impacted by supply chain shortages. And it just trickles like a domino throughout the entire economy. So you might have everything all figured out, and in normal times you've got the right demand levels forecast, but if you've got a customer that has some sort of supply chain issue that disrupts their ordering pattern, that disrupts your demand, and it sort of just resonates or reverberates throughout the supply chain. So it's easier said than done, but the more accurate it can be through demand planning, the better. And then certainly if you can identify bottlenecks and risks, so things like if you're heavily concentrated in a geopolitically risky area, like say like a China, or now in recent days and weeks, Afghanistan or the Middle East, if you have supply chains that are dependent on those areas for whatever it is, then those are some of the challenges, or some of the things that you want to be able to anticipate and say, okay, we've got geopolitical risk here, so let's diversify our supply chain so we're less likely to experience shortages during those times.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it's certainly a hard time to kind of try and foresee that, but good for Tesla, for creating a left-hand turn, if you will, there, C-car metaphor,
Right.
to, create some innovation around their chips. This article I had looked at, BMW actually had to stop production on some of their cars, and it cost them, tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to do that. So still a huge issue with the global chip shortage, but we do see software companies kind of overcoming that and helping
Yeah.
to rewrite that software on chips so that we can get kind of back to production.
Yeah,
Which
you
kind of
bring up.
brings me to,
Sorry to interrupt you, but
sorry, go ahead.
you bring up a couple good points though, which are that it does make you wonder if more organizations are going to move to more vertical integration. So, in parts of their supply chain or parts of their production that they may have outsourced in the past, are they going to bring that in house to at least have some more control and visibility into the supply chain or in the manufacturing or just distribution, whatever it is? Whereas in the past, you might have outsourced it or work with partners to help you complete your supply chain. Will we see more organizations bring that stuff in house? That's one thing or one question that I don't have a good answer to. I have a hypothesis, but I don't know if it's true or not. I think companies will start to do more of that, but it's like a pendulum. Over time, now it's swinging back towards maybe more vertical integration, and someday in the future it'll swing back to more outsourcing and more of the globalization that we've seen in the past. But the other thing it sort of triggered in my mind is when you think about digital transformation in general and just technologies and building competencies for your own organization, a lot of times companies assume that the best answer is to go get a commercial off-the-shelf software to help them manage. But we're seeing more organizations recently in the last few months. In fact, I just talked to a client yesterday based out of France. So they're a French company that's acquiring a U.S. company. And part of the reason they bought this U.S. company is because they have a proprietary technology to automate their supply chain and their business in a way that their competitors can't. So in their minds, they're thinking, we want a custom solution. We want to make it better, but we don't want to go buy SAP or Oracle or Microsoft because that's just a watered down version. So it does make me wonder if more companies will look inward to build these competencies in-house, whether it's through vertical supply chain integration or building their own homegrown systems, even though that's got a negative connotation over the years. It could be the right answer for some organizations.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny how we just talked about, outsourcing for ransomware, and now we're talking about, kind of internalizing this type of software process or, intellectual property that's customization and proprietary to your business. So
Right.
always moving, always evolving, always transforming, if you will.
Yeah.
But that brings me, it's a great segue to kind of our last piece of news here, industry news, is the cloud wars. So if you're a Star Wars fan, I like the idea of the cloud wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan. But SAP and Oracle have kind of have been competing, if you will, for more of the bigger cloud operations. So SAP S/4HANA, the cloud ERP business, jumped 40% in Q2. And then Oracle's competing product actually grew even at a faster rate, at close to 50% in the end of Q2 this year. So it's an interesting kind of conversation, as we've talked a lot about cloud ERP. So I wondered if you might give us just kind of a quick overview of why you feel like bigger companies might be sliding more towards the Oracle cloud systems, the Fusion systems, as opposed to the SAP options.
Yeah, it's a good question. I that's sort of an ongoing battle that feels like it'll never get fully resolved. Is the whole SAP versus Oracle battle? They're sort of mortal enemies, and they're the premier big players in the space that appeal to big companies. So people are always watching what's happening to their metrics. I think probably this is a speculation again. I don't know. I'm not a strategic advisor to SAP or Oracle by any means, but it seems like Oracle had more of a head start with their cloud solutions. They had Fusion 10 or 15 years ago. In fact, it's been around for so long that people started making fun of, in our industry, they started joking about Fusion and would it ever see the light of day, and oh yeah, this is just Oracle spending a bunch of money on a product that's never going to see the light of day. But now it's sort of like, who's laughing now, because they've been working on Fusion for so long, which is the cloud-based platform, and now they have I'd say they have a slightly more mature version of a cloud offering, or a complete ERP cloud offering, when you compare them to SAP S/4HANA. And you sort of see that not only in the metrics you mentioned, but also in the fact that SAP had to go out and buy a lot of cloud providers like Ariba and SuccessFactors and Concur and whatnot. So I think that's partially a reflection of the fact that SAP had to catch up, or they had to go acquire the competencies and the cloud capabilities that they didn't have. Whereas Oracle, it seems like it's sort of been building that for longer. So I think that's probably it. I don't know that we necessarily need to get in the argument of which is better, or SAP versus Oracle.
Yeah.
I can make either argument depending on who a client is, but that'd be my sort of knee-jerk reaction to that.
Yeah. And do you feel like the cloud functionalities and options of NetSuite specifically gives Oracle kind of at least a mid-sized to small business offering?
Yeah.
As opposed to SAP that doesn't really have that? Yeah,
great point. I'm glad you brought that up. That's an important nuance to point out, that, since Oracle acquired NetSuite, that's a whole nother revenue stream. And obviously NetSuite is a very mature cloud product because it's always been in the cloud, and it's, they're 20 years ahead of the competition essentially, because they started back in the late 90s in the cloud before anyone was really thinking about it. So yeah, that is an important point, that Oracle bought NetSuite, so NetSuite appealing to that small and mid market, that's another, that's fueling some of the growth that Oracle is seeing. I also think that since Oracle acquired NetSuite, and this is a double-edged sword, sort of good news, bad news, is ever since Oracle acquired NetSuite, it seems like NetSuite's gotten a lot more aggressive Oracle has been a lot more aggressive about pushing NetSuite into different markets and different nooks and crannies of the industry that maybe it doesn't necessarily belong, or it doesn't fit well. They've done a good job selling it, but we're starting to see some signs in the industry that there's been more troubled NetSuite implementations in recent months and years, and I think it's because Oracle's being so aggressive about pushing NetSuite even further into the small and mid-market. So it's showing up in their numbers as a positive, but I do wonder if there's an underlying dark side to that growth that they're seeing through NetSuite.
Yeah, definitely. And we always talk about it's really the business processes and strategies that lead what you need as far as the software. So like you said, we could say growth versus numbers, those types of things, and do kind of all kinds of forecasting and assumptions around that. But it really does matter what you're looking for as a business, and not being pushed into a software, whether it's aggressively by a vendor such as Oracle, kind of leading NetSuite into clients that might not make sense for it, which leads to a failed implementation. So, lots to consider there. But I think that's a good segue into talking to Cam, because he does a lot of all of this work kind of for our clients. So, such an interesting interview. And I'm excited to debrief with you, because I kind of want to turn the tables and hear a little bit about, your thoughts on the consulting career path. So definitely excited to hear from him.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll, that's a good segue into it. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have Kameron Carpenter, who is a senior consultant at Third Stage, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of being a consultant, what it's like adjusting to consulting life, and what it takes to be a good consultant, all that good stuff. We're going to talk about when we have him on the show here in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology-agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Kyler Cheatham, and I'm excited to have our next guest on the show. Before I bring him on, though, just be sure to check us out every Wednesday with new episodes on YouTube. You can also listen to us on audio-only podcast platforms, and also check us out on social media, too. If you follow Third Stage on any of the major social media platforms, you'll get updates daily on thought leadership and reports and videos and articles that we put out on a daily basis. So be sure to subscribe and follow us on different social media platforms. So I'm excited to have Kameron Carpenter on the show. Kameron is a senior consultant at Third Stage. He's someone who's I've known for a long time, actually even prior to him joining Third Stage, and I'm going to ask him some questions about that. But I want to talk to him today about just the life of a consultant, what it takes to be a consultant, what the adjustment and transition has been like for him as he's entered the world of consulting over the last couple of years. And he's an interesting guy with an interesting background, so should be a good discussion. So, Kameron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Thanks, everybody, and I'm happy to be on the show. So, I guess I could give a little background if you want on who I am. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Kameron Carpenter. I'm a consultant for Third Stage. I've diverse background and experience, and I've really honed in on the consulting side and in the digital transformation projects that we run. A lot of selections, change management, implementation readiness in a diverse span of industries, from non-for-profits, HCM, all the way through to different types of manufacturing clients, large manufacturers of steel, glass, med devices, complexities in the A&D side with compliance and regulatory requirements. So I've just gotten all kinds of different projects over the last 2.5, 3 years working with Third Stage. And a little more about me: I bring a diverse background experience with my military background. I've been in over 11 years now, in the Air National Guard, working more on the maintenance, repair, overhaul side. So thanks for having me, and very excited to be a part of the interview today.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. It's great to have you here. And now, I guess to start, what you started to talk a little bit about your background, but I want to dive into that a little bit in terms of just understanding how you got into consulting. What is it that it drew you to it? How did you get involved? Maybe how did you get started?
So I would say I got my degree in management, the focus in entrepreneurship, and I just had a big interest in entrepreneurialism and really how businesses operate and run. It just amazes me what people can do and accomplish, and I'm always intrigued at how they got to where they are. And so I started looking for a career, and I think what I did was I started to talk to industry leaders such as yourself, individuals like yourself, Eric, and started to ask questions about the different career options. And I was lucky enough to be introduced into the world of consulting, and lucky enough to get a career here at Third Stage where I could jump in and start this career path. So it was a quick jump right into the industry, and it was a lot to take on, but happy I got here. So.
Yeah, me too. And you and I had kind of a loose family connection, not a loose family connection, but friends of family sort of a connection. Yeah. And that's when you and I first met while you were still, I can't remember if you were in college or maybe you just finished college. Was the first time we had met. And then. Yep.
I don't think I'd finished college yet. I think it was actually a few years after when I kind of just was talking with you, kind of reaching out. I just started traveling the country after I graduated with my wife, and we went all over from the East to West Coast. She's a travel nurse, and I worked multiple different industries, mainly in the service industry and others, contracting work as far as residential construction, masonry, that kind of thing. So a pretty manual background before I got to where I am, and happy for the networking and the family history there. So.
Yeah. I think some of that non-consulting background, that direct industry experience, that gives you a different perspective than a lot of people, that haven't actually been sort of in the trenches doing some of the work that you've done.
Yeah, it's different, right? You feel that you have these, I don't know what you would call them, attributes to yourself or things that that you can do certain things, but you got to find somebody who can see that aspect of you and be willing to take the chance on you. And it's very hard for young individuals coming into the consulting world, I would think, because they're just looking for people with certain amount of experience that just isn't always out there. And so I was just very thankful that that I was able to have a conversation, and that you were open to, taking on somebody and challenging them that wasn't specifically in the consulting industry to begin with. So.
Yeah. So I guess, I'll go off script from the start. I know we've got a list of questions we were going to start with here, and I already have a question that isn't on the script, but that sort of triggered it a little bit in that, when you go from, just starting out in your career, kind of going from being a recent college grad into consulting, what was that adjustment like? I mean, how would you describe it?
That's a loaded question.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say to this.
I mean, everybody throws the term around, right? Drinking from the fire hose. And even now I'm still drinking from the fire hose, and it's been 2.5, 3 years later. So that transition was just, physically it was difficult because I was working at a computer more frequently and in desk type work, but the travel was nice and getting to go on site and see clients. So that part was challenging for me, but I think the workload, there's just so much information and things that come right at you, and you have to pick apart it all and put together the dots really quickly to turn it around and provide reasonable information back to the clients, right? And so I adapted quickly, but it took a minute to understand how I was going to take everything I was learning and use that, right? So that was the challenge, I would think. But
yeah, if it's any consolation, I've been doing this 25 years, and I still feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose. Anytime we have a new client, in fact, I just flew back. We were talking before we came on the air here just a few minutes ago, and I was telling you how I just flew back from a client earlier today on the eastern United States, and it was just a massive amount of information. It was almost information overload, right? I felt like, and part of it's because doing it in person, is a little bit different than the Zoom stuff that we've grown accustomed to in the last year and a half during the pandemic. But it's also because in consulting, it seems like you just never, you never have all the answers, or at least you shouldn't have all the answers. And every business is so different. Every time you have a new client, it's a different business model, different strategy, different people, different culture, different operations. I mean, everything's so different that you've got to learn it all. It's like starting over every time you have a new client or a new product.
Yes.
So good news, bad news, I guess.
It's good and bad. You have to, that's part of the being a consultant though, right? Adapting quickly.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get to that a little bit more, but it's just, that's the challenge, learning that and overcoming that, and how you can turn that around into something useful for clients. So,
yeah, absolutely. So based on what you're doing so far, first of all, how long have you been at Third Stage now? It's been about 2 years, or it's been more than that, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been more, because it was February-ish 2019. So I'll be at 3 in February total. I'm not keeping track.
You're an old pro. 2.5 years in, you're becoming a pro. You seem like a pro.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. So on selection projects.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to learn on the implementation side, change management. There's always more you can learn along those lines. But when you think about the last 2.5 years and the types of work you've done and the client engagements you've been involved with, what do you like most about it? I mean, what are the things that appeal to you?
Well, first off, it was learning about a business from end to end. It's just really cool to see all the different industries and the different operations, some that are similar, but so much different, right? And how are they doing what they do, and how do they make money? It's just amazing to see that. Manufacturing is the coolest side to see for me. But I think the other one too, some of the cooler things I've seen are hearing about those client stories for where, it's a third, fourth generation CEO, owner of the company, and they started sweeping floors and then working their way up through the industry, all the way up into running the business. And it's just, you get to hear a lot of cool stories like that. And I think that that's one big thing that I really enjoy about these projects and the work that we do is the diversity of clients that we have and what they do.
Yeah. And what would you say? You may have alluded to this a little bit in when you were talking about the adjustment or the transition from recent college grad into consulting, but what did you find to be the biggest challenges then? So you talk about what you like best about learning all this new stuff, but what are the biggest challenges been, or the things you like least about it?
Challenges or like least about it. Well, I'm supposed to say that my favorite part's writing requirements, right? Documenting.
That's the best part of any project.
No, I'd say what's challenging, I think, is and you have to have the skill set to do it, but it's being able to adjust quickly and adapting to the client and their needs, right? You get into nothing is fully routine. You might have an approach to selection or change management and implementation readiness. There's generally guidelines, but everybody is so different that you have to be able to adjust and adapt to their needs, whether that's providing little or less information and being concise, or giving them more detail into information they need to help make good decisions. So it's the clients are the challenge, but that's what we do this work for that challenge. So yeah, I don't know, dislike, hard to say dislikes. I mean, if you get one or two clients that are constantly questioning you, I think that's a positive, but that can come in line with having, different sets of opinions and alignment as far as the individuals themselves and how they work well together. And it might just be a matter of the team structure and needing to adjust. That could be challenging, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. That's a good reminder that I think sometimes consultants forget that, our job as consultants is to go into difficult situations. And so by nature or by definition, you're going to deal with some personality tensions and pressure and stress and things that you get blamed for. You're going in to help fix the problem that client couldn't solve themselves. So inherently it's not going to be an easy walk in the park, especially with the type of work we do with, digital transformation, business transformation, change in general. That's harder for any organization. So we end up being the recipients of the stress and pressure. And so a lot of times I always tell new consultants, especially even some veteran ones that forget this really important point that, half of our job is to be sort of like a therapist and listen and just understand that, Cameron's stressed out, going through change. Cameron's got, he's got a bullseye on him. If the project fails, he's going to lose his job. And, he's got family pressures as well and other stuff going on. So, it's just relating and empathizing with what the client's going through. It's easy to take it personally and forget. That's why we're there. Yes.
Don't take things personally. You got to step yourself back and put yourself in their shoes. We just had a client and I had a recent client and they had a failed implementation, really didn't meet their needs. They didn't assess and look, properly assess the vendors in the marketplace. And there were a lot of major gaps, and that's a lot of time and effort and energy spent that, now working with us to come in and vet this solution, right? Or when we worked with them is kind of questioning the steps and what we're doing, why we're doing certain things, which is understandable though, because they want to make sure that they're making the right decision for their company. So,
and it's, and when you're doing a software selection, it's a big decision. When you're helping manage the implementation, it's a big implementation, it's a big change. So there's a lot of, just inherently, there's going to be a lot of stress in those situations, and a lot of people aren't ready for that, in the world of consulting. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Cameron. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask you some more questions. We'll be right back with more on Transformation Ground Control.
I'm all right today. You're gonna find.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us, or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
All out there to dry
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Kameron Carpenter talking about the life of a consultant. So we're going to jump right back into the interview here. So of the work you do at Third Stage, I know you were talking about how a lot of the work you've done on clients over the last 2.5 years has been focused on software evaluation selections or that digital strategy and roadmap piece of it. But you're also, I know you've dabbled in other areas and you've continued to expand your skill set. Based on what you've done so far, what type of work do you like best so far, and why? What do you like best about it?
I do actually like specifically to the tasks that I'm typically doing. I really enjoyed the workshops, digging into the process, and what the clients are doing and how they're doing it, and getting to see the operations, actually physically seeing it, going through usually plant tours and seeing how the job is done. I think being able to get that perspective along with running through these workshops from all these different stakeholders in the business helps to give you that true picture that you need. Because without that, I don't think that you can do multiple steps in the process or project and help guide and advise them from either selections, change management, implementation readiness, or even from an implementation perspective, not knowing or understanding the complexities of the company and their needs as far as the organ, moving forward in a very large project that's usually costly and time consuming. So,
yeah, that's a really good point. That in consulting, a lot of times you'll have different areas of focus, and our team tends to be a little bit more broad and cross-functional in terms of not just being experts in one area, but really trying to understand the entire big picture of a digital transformation. But a lot of consultants will focus on one work stream or one part of a transformation, like technology, for example. There's system architects or data migration experts or hands-on technical configuration experts, whatever the case may be, or even change management experts. You think about all these things that may seem like they don't have a lot to do with the operational side or really understanding the business needs because you're focused on the technology, the change management, or whatever it is. But I think you have a really good point, which is you have to understand, no matter what you do and where you're focused, you do have to understand how the business works, or you should understand how the business works and how you're going to help improve it. And I think that's another thing that consultants side of, they focus too much on what the technology can or can't do, and they don't pay enough attention to what the client is doing. And there's some good reasons why they do the stuff they do, even if it's broken or inefficient. And, that's an important point.
And as an advisor, I think it's a cool part of the work that we do too is helping to present the information for the individuals we're working with to make big decisions on, right? So we're here. I'm usually here to make someone else look really good and to help them, give them the information and the details they need to make the best decisions that they can for their organization. So I think that's very enjoyable. It's very fun to work with all the different leaders in the industry. And I think that's a big part of the work that we do. The work is I've gotten to work with top leaders, executives, CEOs, C-level suite, and have gotten a completely different perspective that I probably wouldn't have gotten going elsewhere, starting off, in a different career field.
Yeah. I started off in consulting as well. And I remember feeling like there's sort of an immediate credibility you have just because you're a consultant. Doesn't matter what you do or don't know or how smart you are or aren't. It's just like you're a consultant. So you have this immediate perceived credibility, which can help, but it could also be tricky, especially early in your career. And maybe I'll come back to that. To that point.
We will come back to that. I was going to say it's key is being resourceful.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that now, actually, while we're on it, because I might forget, honestly, and we might go a different direction. But that's an interesting point that I wasn't planning on asking about. But how do you starting off, especially where you're at right now, or even a year or two ago when you were first starting out. I can't help but compare you now to where I was, obviously when I started out around the same age in consulting. I remember people looking at me and sort of looking at me funny and saying, you're really young, like you're younger than my kids. And, I've been working at this company for longer than you've been alive. How are you going to help me? How can you, Mr. 25, 26-year-old, how are you possibly going to help me run my business better or improve. So, has that happened to you? And how have you navigated that issue? Especially you, because you look younger than you are. Even though you are young, you look even younger than you actually are. So I imagine that might be a
First off, grow some scruff, and it'll make you look a little bit older. That helps.
That's what I did. Especially when you've got gray in the scruff, that helps.
I'm working on those now. I have a daughter, so that'll
do it.
Yeah. I have ran in. It hasn't been directly hit towards me because we structure our project team so well that we have knowledge in industry experience from multiples. Is that I don't act like I know something that I don't know, and I get the information I need from the individuals I need to. I'll lean on that experienced team member. I obviously in situations where I have to answer certain questions, and I think just from my experience over the last 2.5 years has helped me to be able to guide and answer certain questions for clients, right? But I think I'm trying to think if there was ever. I think it was maybe the first. Like I said, project structure is key in having the right team members with you. It was one of my first projects I was on, and someone started to ask me about Dynamics 365 versus another software product, and I had not known much about either product line or releases for those product lines, right? And thankfully, I had 2 other senior individuals right behind me, heard the question, and they just turned and jumped right on in. So I think that's key. Is finding a good team that's always going to be there to support you. You're not going to always be shielded, and you need to be able to don't lie about something. If you don't know, you don't know, but I can get the answer for you. So
yeah,
not a good example. I'm trying to think of some, and I honestly don't feel like I've been painted into a corner ever for age or anything other than maybe them calling out my age.
Right.
So,
or someone on our own team, giving you a hard time about your age. That happens sometimes too. I've been guilty of that, as I already have been in this interview at least once. So,
I mean, there's internal challenges that comes with age. I think with any team structure, that this might be a different conversation, but don't know if we want to dive into it or not.
Well, you have a good point though about the team, relying on a team, especially at that point in your career, making sure you're not letting yourself get in too far over your head or pretending to know something you don't.
Right.
And it's still, even like I said, 25 years later, it still happens to me too, where someone will say, what are your thoughts on the newest release of whatever software? And, sometimes I didn't even know there was a new release, and, they're asking me what my thoughts are of certain functionality within the system. And, no one of us is going to know everything about everything out there, as much as I'd love to think someday we might, or all of us might, but it's just not going to happen. Stuff's changing too quickly for any one person to know it all.
Absolutely.
So that team approach is always important, for sure.
Yes.
So what are do you have 1 or 2 examples of client projects that you've worked on in the last couple of years that you've enjoyed the most, like ones that just stand out as you liked it best because of either the type of work you were doing, you like the people, or you like the industry, the company, or all the above?
It's all the above, but I have a lot of great projects. I think there's 2 specific ones that are just popping into my head right away. I mean, I obviously enjoy some of the individual ones I ran and did selections for myself. And then my first project, I always look back to that one. It was a great, very large client. I'm very lucky to be on that project. Large manufacturer, steel products, right? Stateside. And that project team was awesome. And actually my other experience that I was going to bring up is with the same project team, these project manager on it. But so there's a trend there, I think. What a cool industry. They had a lot of cool people there. They were just diving deep into conversation. They were super complex. I jumped into a very hard project, and it was just everything coming at you a mile a minute. I mean, it was, multi-location, multi-site, and then all the divisional differences of the different locations across the country, right? So now you got to take all this information, conceptually compile it into other detailed deliverables to help drive towards a successful project, and not knowing what you're doing. So I think that client in particular was just such a great client that my experience was great, even though I had the challenges of learning everything, right? So very fortunate there. Plus I had a team project manager that really helped and guided me through a lot of it, and took the time to help me. So that was it was the experience and the client. And the second client that comes to mind and is pretty recent is just awesome engineering to order company. And I think you're seeing a trend in manufacturing. Is more my favorite, more of my niche area I like to work in. But they were just, we culturally meshed well together. We got along, we got to know the client very well. And I think we built a lot of trust and communicated well from the front end all the way through the project, that it just everything worked out the way it was supposed to. We worked through the deliverables, we worked through vetting out another software solution, and we provided a lot of value to them, and they resonated that back to us. And I think when you get that validation from clients and how grateful they are for what you were able to do and work with them on, it just sets them apart from the rest. Really does. So, but
yeah, those are two cool examples. And I know, you've been involved with some international clients as well. And
yep.
We actually have, speaking of international, we have just some responses from people where they're listening in from today. We've got people in someone in Prague, Netherlands, Cleveland, Ohio, UK. So a lot of different people throughout the world that are listening live here through the discussion. And actually, we have our first question from the audience over on LinkedIn. Actually, is where the first question comes from. And that question is from Rashid, who's an Odoo developer on LinkedIn. And he asks, hello, folks. As consultants and managers, did you learn people skills along the way? And Dale Carnegie wrote a wonderful book about it. But I guess just to hone in on the question, did you learn people skills along the way? And maybe talk about what are some of those people skills that are important as a consultant?
To be honest, I think that, and Eric, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the skill set that stood out for me was that I was able to work to communicate and talk well with people and just to build relationships. And I think that's just one big skill set that a consultant can have. It's not the end all be all. Being optimistic, being outgoing, I think it's very helpful, especially when you can take information from different key players, from IT to end users to the executive level, and communicate it at different levels. Those are traits and kind of things that you can build on when you get into the field. Lean on those industry leaders to help guide you to hone in on your skills and get better. But I think some people are just naturally have those people skills. And if you have those people, utilize them, right? There's certain things that I'm not going to do just because that's not what I do. I'm not going to go code software because I'm not going to do that. But I think that there is a level where you can start to hone in on some of those skills and get better at it.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Cameron. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask you some more questions. We'll be right back with more on Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Cameron Carpenter talking about the life of a consultant. So we're going to jump right back into the interview here. How would you describe the people skills that you think are most important? Just more in terms of like maybe not so much just not so much from a change management perspective as a discipline, but just more as a basic skills, a basic people skill as a consultant.
Yeah.
What do you think is important on that front?
I think it's listening. If you can listen and understand truly where someone's coming from, and then either reiterate that back to them in a different way or somewhere where you get confirmation from them, I think is a big skill to have. You need to understand and assess the situations that you're in, especially with the different key players that you'll be working with on very complex projects, because you're balancing information from end users to C-level, and the decisions from the top might not resonate with those from the bottom. And so you have to understand who you're speaking to, and know when to say certain things. And I don't know if there's a good way to build that skill other than be thrown into it, being around individuals that are really good at it, letting them do the talking first and kind of understanding how they would handle certain situations.
Yeah. That's well stated. And I think the listening, if I had to pick one thing that's most important to being a good consultant, I'd say it's listening. In fact, I'll take someone who's not as smart but listens really well as someone who's really smart but doesn't listen or thinks they have all the answers. And on paper, you may think the latter is going to be the better consultant because they have more answers or they're smarter or whatever. But I think it's overrated. And not to say you can't be completely clueless. I mean, you have to sort of know what you're doing, and you have to be certainly leaps and bounds ahead of where your clients are, but you don't need to be the smartest, especially if you have those people skills and those soft skills, or what I sometimes refer to as finesse. There's a certain finesse and an art to being a good consultant, and it's super hard to teach, but it's easy to spot. And that's actually something I saw in you before we ever, talked about you being a consultant. I just noticed your interpersonal skills were so strong. I felt like you would be a really good consultant if you wanted to be. And thankfully you wanted to be. So that's good. You were able to make that jump and translate those skills into consulting.
Yes. And I appreciate it, because if it wasn't for that observation, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I did, people would ask like, well, what did you, college kid? I mean, how do you know someone that's in college that has never done consulting? How do you know they're going to be a good consulting? You never really know for sure, but it's those, like you said, it's the listening, the empathy, understanding, and you pick that up in a personal conversation. You can pick that up just as easily talking to someone about family stuff, as easily as you could talking about business or operations or whatever. So usually it's pretty transferable. So for those of you that are trying to build a good consulting team, or you're trying to figure out how to be a good consultant, I don't know if you can necessarily learn those soft skills or the people skills or the finesse, but I think it's something you can develop, and it's a muscle you can build over time to really try to listen more and talk less. I think that's probably the biggest advice I would give to a lot of consultants, especially as you get later in your career. I think you have a tendency, myself included, you tend to want to talk more, listen less, and you want to keep that flipped and listen a lot more than you're talking, no matter how much you know. Even if you think you have the answer, even if you're right and you have all the answers, it's better to sit back and listen. So if you're in a situation where you have someone who's maybe interested in moving into consulting, either they're early in their careers, just out of college, or maybe they're mid-career and they've been doing something else. They've been working internally at an organization, and they're thinking about making a leap to consulting. What advice would you give them? Like, how would you suggest someone get started, or how would they explore the world of consulting or prepare to be a good consultant? Okay.
I think if you're considering taking a leap into this world, you need to start talking to people in this world. You need to ask them the pros and cons to consulting, what the work-life balance is. Make sure you're looking at a firm that's doing projects somewhere to what you want to be doing, that they resonate with your core values as an individual as well. Because there's so many different roles in consulting, from, an independent agnostic consulting firm, such as Third Stage, to, working for a vendor or partner of a vendor in consulting on software, and the latter. I mean, the list goes on and on. So do your due diligence. And honestly, I think networking is key, talking to people in the industry and where you're interested, and then making an educated decision based on that, right? finding the right job, because you're already in a career field and you're already maybe you're experienced and you're now want to take that experience and use it elsewhere, which would be great because individuals like me get to take your 20 plus years experience and learn from it very quickly, such like reading a book.
Right.
But for younger ones, just dive in and don't look back. Once you make that leap and you get in, keep making the leap, even internally. Make sure you're always trying to jump on something new, learn something new, asking lots of questions. I think I ask 1,000 questions a day to one person alone, let alone everybody else on our team. So don't ever stop wanting more. Always keep leaping.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you kind of alluded to this. You didn't use these words, but it triggered a thought, as it relates to your personality, as well as what I think our team exhibits and what I think good consultants exhibit, which is that humble nature, to be able to know, first of all, to be self-aware enough to know that I don't have all the answers. And even if I think I have the answer, I might want to validate it. I might want to bounce it off someone else. I might want to brainstorm with others just to get, make sure either I'm thinking about this right, or maybe someone can help me make it an even better thought or analysis of whatever I'm thinking. So that humble nature, the inquisitive question asking that you allude to, I think those are both really good points that are sort of that finesse piece that I was talking about. It's hard to teach that, but you can focus on it. You can be mindful of that, as you're thinking about consulting or just being a good consultant. Well,
you just made me think of something too that's key. If you're going to leap into the consulting world, find a company that has the right company culture. And I'm thankful, Eric, for the company that the way you set our structure and culture is it's amazing, the type of individuals we get to work with and the flexibility and their willingness to help you learn and grow when you're in this consulting role. So the right consulting company with the right culture can make or break your experience.
Yeah. It's a great point. And that comes from, I appreciate you saying that my focus on that comes from having messed it up before, my last company. So I try not to, I don't hide that fact that I did not focus on culture in the first consulting company I started, and it created a very toxic, cancerous, negative culture, and people didn't want to be there. People didn't like it, myself included. It got to the point where I just didn't want to be there. And it was so hard to change, and especially with different ownership and whatnot over time. But you get it right from the start, and you get a good culture. You find that firm that has that good culture, you're just going to be more excited about doing the work. And you think about being in the trenches with consultants, traveling, you're going to unusual places that you're not familiar with, you're dealing with different personalities. We talked before about how you're absorbing the stress of your clients, and it's a pretty stressful job. I mean, it's not, I think people think it's more glamorous than it is. It's hard work. I mean, it's a pretty gritty job. I think, especially for a white collar job, it's pretty gritty. And, so I think you want to be around people you like when you're in the trenches. I know you've got a military background too, and I suspect there's something there. I don't have a military background, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that's something that might translate or that you might relate to in the military if you're, not that you've been at war, but if you think about potentially getting deployed or going to war, you want to be with people you like and that you trust and that have your back, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. We have a good team of people that I know that if I need something or if I need help, they're there. They can fill my role in my spot and take over, without missing a beat. And so we have that flexibility and that capability because we work well as a team. Plus, culture is good, and the normal hazing is always going to be there. So, got to have a little fun with it too. So.
Right. Well, you were our first, you weren't inexperienced, but you were our first more junior hire, as a company. So I think you probably got the brunt of of the hazing because of that. And hopefully it's all in good fun.
Oh yeah. That's why I'm the hugger. We won't go into details there though.
Right. So I've heard. So what about, when you think about the fact that, consulting is not for everyone, we've talked about some of the good stuff and, some of the stuff that could be difficult or challenging, or maybe things we don't always like about consulting, but what are some signs or characteristics or personality traits that you would say would indicate that maybe you're not a good fit for consulting. Because I think that's just as important as knowing you're a good fit. You also want to know when you're not a good fit for something,
Right.
and you kind of want to rule that out, or at least know that maybe you want to dig deeper to understand it before you commit to going in that direction. What are some of those personality traits that you'd say that that may create some additional stress or dislike of this profession?
Well, first off, just generally, if you like a normal 9 to 5, off on the weekends, your 2-week vacation, like, this isn't the career for you. And I don't mean it in a harsh way, right? But there is flexibility, I think, in this, and we do have a good work-life balance with the structure that we've set up with Third Stage. But when you're working projects and with clients, they're hiring you as the experts to come in, and you only have a certain period of time to get something done. You got to get it done. If it's working Saturday, Sunday, a couple 100-hour weeks, 50, 60, up to 100-hour weeks, just to knock out some project tasks to make sure we're meeting the deadlines. So that's just what has to happen. At the end of the day, we're here to support our clients, and you got to be there for them. They expect us to be there. So just, it's not a normal work environment, I think. So if you want that, you're not going to have that. Because I'm trying to think of like actual personality traits, but like, I think you need to really be able to work. I don't know what I would call them, but characteristics are like, you need to be optimistic. You need to be you need to be, I guess when you start to play the role of therapist, you need to be able to relate to people. And I think that's a big one. And be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because, and that's why, entrepreneurial studies was fun for me. It's a lot of work, and things are changing quickly. You have to adapt and adjust. And in this world, nothing's the same. You might do a similar project or task, but every client's so different, complex. You're in, with that fire hose of information coming at you, you're always adapting and adjusting to what you need to do to make a successful project for a client.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're, maybe to add to that, if you are someone that likes a super predictable environment, not just the hours, like you were saying, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but even just day to day, tell me what to do, tell me what the answer is, or tell me how to do it. So much of what we do is, as much as we have our methodologies, our tool sets, our frameworks, it's constantly evolving and improving. There's still every day you get new clients, different situations that you haven't seen before, but we've seen so many other situations that we can apply and mold a certain approach or framework to different situations. But you have to be comfortable with that ambiguity, knowing that there's a lot of gray in consulting. It's not black and white.
Yep. No, I think that's really the biggest one. I mean, it's not a normal work environment. It can get stressful, and it can be a lot. You can be traveling, working multiple clients. And there's a lot of complexity to working multiple clients and traveling. I mean, there's, so there you go. Just balance. You need to be motivated, and you need to be able to go the extra mile, and disciplined. I think discipline's a big one. Because a lot of times it's on your schedule to get what you need to get done, and you're the one that has to make yourself wake up every day and do it. So
right, yeah, and also, one of the smaller, finer points of being a consultant is that generally consultants are paid a lot of money. Maybe as individuals are they're not making all the money that's getting billed, but the client is paying a lot of money for your services. And, they see that invoice every month, and they see the line item that says Cameron Carpenter, X $1,000 for X number of hours. And so it's very clear how much you and other consultants, all of us, are charging per hour. And so there's just a higher level of expectations that go along with that. And so, you talk about discipline. One thing that came to mind as you were saying that is just the little things of like, not following up when you said you would, or missing little details, or being a little sloppy or loose with your deliverables. That stuff can work fine in a normal, bigger organization, especially, but in consulting, you've got to, everything you do is sort of watch very closely. not in a distrustful kind of way necessarily, but just more of a prove your value kind of a way, and prove that invoice I just got. I need to see that value from you every day and every little thing you do. So that you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to be willing to deliver to that, because that's
Right.
where a lot of consultants fall down or fall flat.
Yes. No, that's, yeah. Accept the challenge.
Right. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Cameron. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask you some more questions. We'll be right back with more on Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Cameron Carpenter talking about the life of a consultant. So we're going to jump right back into the interview here. I'll ask you this question. You can pass on this if you want, and I'll try to take a stab at it. But I would be curious to see what you think if you have a thought on this. But question is from Chalita. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Chalita or Shalita on LinkedIn, and the question is, how did you cultivate that good company culture? What specifics did you see? And maybe I'll ask you that perspective if you have an answer from the perspective of what you saw or what you see in terms of how we've built the culture. I mean, what are your observations about the culture, and what in particular is good about it? You started to talk a little bit about it, but maybe you could go deeper into what you like about it or what you think makes it a good culture.
Well, I think essentially you're drawing the right people in because of the vision of our organization and what we do, and our focus on our clients, and that we're agnostic. We're here to help them. So I think that's a big start, is how we represent ourselves as an organization and what we're doing for our clients. And we hold true to that. Everybody that comes on always is speaking about our agnostic approach to working for clients, right? And not having any ties in any industry to any vendors. And I think that is a big key to the type of individuals that come here, because they're here wanting to help clients. With that being said, too, I think that was a big part of the culture, is essentially assessing those individuals and hiring on individuals that work well as a team, right? I think there's certain traits of individuals I'm seeing that are consistently being hired across the board. And I don't know what the criteria is from that end. I can only say for what it would potentially look like based on who I'm working with, and it does. So essentially, I think it's our vision that drives the culture, and then our team mentality.
Right. Yeah. And you bring up an interesting thought or something that I have in the back of my mind whenever I interview people. And part of what we've done with the culture here is that, first of all, we have a team-based recruiting approach. And so I still interview every person we hire, no matter, what level they're at. And that's not sustainable long-term, but it's enough to get us to 40 people where we're at now. I anticipate doing that for the near future as long as I can, because I think it's so important. Not because I'm the sole arbitrator or the sole, I'm the only person that knows whether or not they're a good fit, but I know what kind of company I want us to be. I have a very clear vision of that, just because I messed it up at the last company. So I sort of did a 180 on that approach that I took at the old company. But one of the litmus tests I always ask myself, and I do it literally every time I interview someone, is as I'm talking, I'm listening for substance. I'm looking for those little things, the raw skills you look for in a consultant. But I also ask myself, if I'm traveling with this person and I get stuck at an airport for, 4 hours because of a weather delay, which has happened to all of us in consulting, and I'm, at a bar or restaurant in the airport, just stranded with this person, is that going to be a good time for me? Am I going to enjoy that time, or is it going to be a drag? Is it going to be like tension, not tension, but, just something that's not going to be enjoyable for me. And it sounds somewhat judgmental, and it is pretty judgmental, I'll admit, but I think if I just like the person, that to me is really important. Like, I just have to be like, that's a good person, or that's someone I like, I just genuinely like. I like their values. I like who they are. I like the way they were brought up, or, all those things that just make you drawn to someone. I think that's really important. So sometimes it's just that simple. Like, do you like the person? Mm-hmm. And of course, yes, you need to have a certain minimum amount of knowledge and all the other stuff we talked about. But a lot of times it comes down to that one thing. And if I answer no, we usually don't hire that person. In fact, every time I've gone against that and tried to hire them anyway, it usually doesn't go well. So not because of me, but just because it isn't a good cultural fit with with the rest of the rest of the culture. So,
and I had 3 interviews when I came on. So just
yeah, and you were kind of a gamble too, because you were, like I said, you were the first more junior entry level type consultant, the first one we had hired. So it was somewhat of a gamble, and we knew it was a big deal, to bring on someone. And we wanted you to come on and make sure it's a good fit for you too. We don't want to put you in a situation where you were going to fail, weren't going to succeed. So, so here's a semi-funny question from Sam Graham, who's a frequent engagement collaborator with us. He writes guest blogs for us, and he's very active on social media with our posts and whatnot. But his question is, hopefully you'll appreciate his humor here, but as a consultant from a military background, have you ever wished you could reach for an M16?
M4, but yes.
Right. Yeah. So thanks for that, Sam. We need a little comic relief here on a Friday.
We should get together sometime, Sam, and have a different conversation.
Yep. Sam's in Spain, so you'll have to go there, or he'll have to come to Illinois, where you're based.
I can go to Spain. That's fine.
There's worse places to go for sure. Here's an interesting question. I wasn't planning on getting into this, but it's an interesting question from Albert on LinkedIn. And let me preface this by saying at third stage, we have both, as we've grown, we started off with mostly contractors, when we first started the company. And then as we've grown, we've sort of done more of a hybrid where we have some W-2 employees, and we also have contractors as well. But the question from Albert is, I think contractors are more in demand as companies no longer want to pay for benefits for long-term full-time employees. So I guess, it's more of a comment statement, I guess, and I would sort of agree with that. Although I'd say we're doing the opposite. I mean, we're sort of shifting our mix to be, we're not quite 50-50 yet, but our vision is to get to more of like a even balance between employees and contractors. And even the contractors we hire, we treat them the same as employees, and lately I can't even keep track of who's a contractor and who's not. I don't know. In many cases who they are, or what role they are. But I guess the question is, how has that worked? How have you seen that work in our company? The mix of employees, contractors, do you see pros and cons to, from your perspective, maybe not so much from the company perspective, because I value both. I see the benefits of both contractors and employees. What has your observation been along those lines?
Honestly, for me, and yes, I'm contractor, but that doesn't change my viewpoint of working for third stage. I am third stage. I'm a company man, even though I'm paid contract. That's fine by me. I have other ways to get healthcare benefits and things like that. So I've set myself in a good place. I don't contract with other companies. And honestly, I think with the individuals we have, a lot of, first off, I can't tell the difference between W-2 or contractor at all. I never know unless I just ask, minus the few that I know. But I believe most of them, if not all of them, are actually just contracting for third stage. And I think they're very set on our vision and our goals, and we get a good set of projects that resonate well with what they want to do. So, you could probably consider other organizations treating contractors as numbers, but not here. We're very well valued as a team, and the things that our ideas and our thoughts to process and how we do things internally are heard and listened to from all individuals in the team. So I value that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I don't know if that's true for other companies. Quite honestly, I know for a lot of companies, a lot of the bigger companies will hire very specific contract roles, like for one project or whatever. Our contractors tend to be involved in multiple projects, and we have some clients where it's fully dedicated, full-time role or whatever, longer term. But a lot of them are kind of a mix. So it's a good variety. Back to your point earlier about the constantly learning and getting new experiences and whatnot. So one last question, and then we'll wrap up. I didn't realize it's already been almost an hour. Time flies when you're talking about fun stuff like consulting careers. But another question from Albert on LinkedIn is my observation with the accelerated technology in the past 6 years. It's a very specific number, by the way, Albert. 6 years. Accelerated technology in the last 6 years is that if you don't move on via contracting, your skills become obsolete. So I find that interesting. Maybe you could talk a little bit about just your skills and how do you keep your skills fresh, or what are some of the things you found, or what do you do?
The projects we're in are so dynamic, and you're right. I think technology is constantly shifting and changing. So to keep up with that is to be well read. So constantly reading, constantly learning. I always lean on team members, whether new or experienced. Everybody, there's so many different projects happening at the same time that I think it's important to get the lessons learned from others. Talk about, when we specifically look at selection projects, for instance, the different vendors that we're seeing in all the different industries. If you know individuals that have been focused in specific clients, that would help getting their information and knowledge from that. And then you always have to be educating yourself. And I think this comes with being a good consultant, is that as you're assessing and helping a company through a project, if there's something you don't know, you need to go find out. And so putting in the extra time to do so.
Yeah. Gets back to what you were saying earlier about, asking lots of questions and being resourceful and working with the team and all that good stuff. I think the minute you stop doing that stuff, even if you feel like you don't have to anymore because you've gained enough experience or you're smart enough or whatever, I think you're sort of doomed from a consulting perspective, because you're going to stop learning. You're just going to stop. You're losing that curiosity. You're losing that humble nature. You're losing that constant learning that you should be doing as a consultant, because things are not just technology, by the way. It's business is changing. Business models, operations, change management, and it's all changing. I mean, there's nothing about what we do that stays. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks for being here today, Kameron. This was a super insightful conversation. I always love talking to you, not just in the work setting, talking about clients and stuff like that, but just more generally about careers. I think this is really fascinating. So I appreciate you being here today. Yeah,
well, I appreciate you having me. Thanks, everybody, for the questions, and thanks for not throwing me too big of zingers. Maybe next time. But always happy to be a part of it. And thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kameron. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate having you on the show. A lot of good stuff you brought up, a lot of good points and things to think about for those that might be thinking about a career in consulting. Maybe they're already in consulting, or maybe they're thinking about partnering with a consulting firm. These are all things that are really important to think about in this world of digital and business transformation. So we're going to unpack some of the themes and topics here when we come back from a quick break. We'll be back with more on Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us, or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Kyler Cheatham. We just finished up an interview before the break with Kameron Carpenter from the Third Stage team, talking about just the career trajectory and overall development of consultants and what it takes to be a good consultant. what were your thoughts or questions about that conversation, Kyler?
Yeah, I love when we do these types of topics because I feel like that it kind of lifts the veil on what it means to be a consultant, specifically in this space, and how much opportunity there really is, especially for young people like Cam, to look at this career as something that they can utilize. So I liked the part that he kind of talked about, his roadmap and his overall networking, and that seems like that worked out well for him, is just having the confidence to reach out to industry thought leaders like yourself, or other people within the industry, other leaders. And I wonder from your perspective, like I said, I kind of wanted to turn the tables a little bit. When you are hiring a consultant, how do you train them? Like, how do you make sure? Because usually a lot of times consultants kind of act as their own entity. How do you kind of integrate them into the third stage mission and values and make sure that their skills are up to par?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, just to back up, it actually starts with the recruiting process. I mean, it starts with the type of people we hire, and it's really hard. I mean, it's something that's taken me a long time to figure out in my career, is how to find that right balance between someone that's smart, knows what they're doing, and can add a lot of value knowledge-wise, which is why a big part of why people hire consultants. But you need it to be sort of a confidence and an intelligence level that's in check, if you will. It's you need someone that's sort of humble. Ideally, you can find someone that's really smart, knows everything about everything, but they're super humble. But that's really hard to find because usually, someone that smart is not going to be humble. So that's always hard, and we rule out a lot of people that on paper would be great consultants, or maybe they have been great consultants at other places, but we just don't hire them because we don't feel like the team chemistry is going to work out. And I don't know if have I ever asked you have you ever seen that TV show on Apple Plus called Ted Lasso? Do you by chance watch that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
No,
there's a
I
show on. Bear with me. I'm going to come back to your question, but this is very relevant. But there's a show that our family watches it together because it's a good family show. It's about an American football coach that goes to Europe to be the head coach of a soccer team, but he knows nothing about soccer. And there's a whole lot of sub stories and subplots and stuff. But he goes there, and he has this one player who's a young superstar. He's by far their best player talent wise on the team, but he's a total cancer in the locker room. And so they make the difficult decision that he needs to go. And so they actually get rid of him, which is a very controversial decision for the fans and all this stuff because he's a popular player, not because people like him, but because he's a good player. So it just reminds me, when I saw that, I was actually telling my kids in the episodes leading up to his departure, I kept telling them they've got to get rid of him. And it was like so strong in my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't keep this kid. They've got to get rid of this guy, even though he's putting up all their points and he's, the best offensive defensive player they have. So anyway, I bring that up because that's a lot like, it kind of reminds me of consulting. You have to find that chemistry. And so if you find someone who is humble, like I was saying before, they know their stuff, but they're still humble and they're flexible and they're willing to learn and they're not too consumed by the Kool-Aid of the industry, which is another problem or another challenge we have, is finding people that are knowledgeable, have some experience, but aren't so knowledgeable and experienced that they're blindly drinking the Kool-Aid of the industry that has led to so many millions of dollars of failures and botched implementation. So having said all that recruiting is where it starts. And then once we have a good team in place and once we hire someone, then we go through a training process where we have a lot of videos, like on-demand videos we use for training purposes. And then we also do monthly workshops internally that unpack different things like case studies of specific client projects and walkthroughs of our methodologies and tools and templates and all that stuff. And so we record all those. We do them live with our team. We record them, and then we have new hires watch those videos, if they're hired after the fact. And then obviously part of their ongoing training are those monthly workshops. So we try to do stuff like that. We also do a lot of cross-collaboration of project teams. So we don't put just one person on a project. We'll put 2 to 3 to 4 people on a project just to make sure that you're getting the best of multiple brains and you're getting, a better collaborative result. So those are some of the things we do to train and get people kind of operating as a stronger team.
Yeah, definitely. And something that Cam mentioned, and I've noticed, in being a part of the third stage team, is it seems as though your senior leadership team, your directors, your senior project managers have this kind of mentorship mentality with the younger associate consultants or consultants. And I wondered did you find people that like to kind of coach when you were looking for your team, or what did that look like? Because that seems like something that Cam referenced, and I like too. People are always excited to kind of talk to you about what they do. And I wonder, is that a cultural thing with the business, or was that a aspect that you really looked for when resourcing?
Yeah, it's an aspect we look for when resourcing, and it's similar to the humble nature that we're looking for, and the people that are willing to collaborate in general. We generally look for people that want to collaborate. They don't want to work alone. Maybe they tried being a solo consultant on their own, or a one man or woman show, and they want to be part of a bigger team. And that's appealing to us because that tells you that there's a certain amount of loneliness and limitation that comes with working by yourself, if as a solo consultant. But if you have a team that you're part of, you're going to be able to do a lot more. And so we look for people that want that and value that. And so that's one layer. And then obviously there's a leadership piece of that's more the coaching or the mentorship that you're talking about, which is somewhat, it's very collaborative, obviously, but it's also something, it's a trait that you want to find in people. In fact, I actually really like hiring people that coach something, that have coached in the past, or they coach their kids' team, or anytime someone has that on their resume, it appeals to me, because I think, okay, that person knows how to teach a kid how to play soccer or football or basketball or whatever. And not that that's at all the same as what we do, but if you can coach a kid how to do something that fundamental and that basic, that's the kind of thinking and personality that we need as a good consultant. So we tend to look for a lot of, things that aren't directly related to being a good consultant, but they are very transferable. Okay, thanks, Skylar. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more discussion around this whole idea of the life of a consultant. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. I'm here with Kyler, talking about the life of a consultant and what it takes to adjust to being a consultant, and the pros and cons of consulting. So let's jump right back into the conversation.
In my experience, people that work in more of technical type of IT software, they always aren't the most approachable. So I wondered, I think that you've done such a good job in the Third Stage leadership team of still having those extremely smart type of analyst mentality and bringing them in and kind of setting them up for success. So do you go through an exercise where you kind of match personality and culture to clients too, when you're like, hey, I have this person that's super smart but may not be as outgoing? Do you look at them and say, okay, when we're setting up project teams, maybe he or she isn't a good fit? Is that kind of a process you go through?
Yeah, and it's also not just the fit with the client, but even just or not even individual fits with particular clients, but also the team that we put together for that client. You need a team that's balanced. So in other words, it's very rare that we put a team in front of a client that's, 3 really strong project managers, or, 2 people that are really technical and really good at the technology piece. Usually we would say, well, let's get a really strong technical person because we need it for whatever reason on this project, and let's get someone that's really good at change management, and then let's get someone that's really strong at program management. I mean, you would love to have a couple of people that are really good at all of those things, but we're all experts in certain things and have strengths and weaknesses in certain things. So the key is to put together that overall team that the culturally and skill set wise best fits that particular that particular client and that particular project.
Yeah, definitely. And so where, if you do need a certain expertise, or you're looking at the, from a 10-foot view of the organization, and you see there's a gap, where do you go to look for candidates?
Well, that's a good question as far as when we're hiring our team or expanding our team.
Yeah, or so I know Cam had mentioned that he was kind of networking with you. Is that how you usually find most of your talent in the organization? Or is there another route that maybe our listeners can go through if they are interested in looking at a career path in consulting?
Yeah, I mean, I think networking is the most powerful one. We've hired a lot of people that I've either worked with in the past or I've crossed paths with in some way in the past. And so I just know them. And I'll always take someone that I know and familiar with. All things being equal, I'll always take that person that I know I'm familiar with, even if I think they might not be quite as good as someone that I don't know that I just hire off the street. If it's a slight drop or I feel like it's not quite, the right skill set, but I know them and there's a familiarity there, I'll typically hire the person I know, because chances are the cultural aspect is going to work out a lot better and the chemistry is going to be a lot better because I know the person and I know them. Typically I know them well enough to know how they might or might not fit into the team we're trying to create. So I'd say the more you can network and just get on the radar of people, the better. I've had some people that we've hired that I've just interacted with on social media over a certain amount of time, and they're very persistent and they constantly interact with me, and it gets to the point where I feel like I know them. And then they reach out and want a job or they want to talk about joining the team, and it makes it easier for me to say, yeah, I know of you, and I may not know if they're a great fit or not. It's not necessarily that I'm a guarantee that I'm going to hire them or that we're going to hire them, but they're at least on the radar, and I can kind of grease the wheels to make sure they get through the process and get a good look, in our recruiting process.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like you'd like every candidate that's listening right now to just send you an email, is what I'm hearing.
Right, because I read all my emails in a very timely fashion, as you know well in my very slow response time to emails. But
no.
But it's true. I mean, through repetition. I mean, if someone posts on my LinkedIn account or comments on my LinkedIn account 3, 4, or 5 times, I may not see every one of them, but I start to see that person repetitively, and then I start wondering, like, who is this person? And there's times where I'll just go look at people's profiles, and then there's times where I've reached out to people and said, hey, I see you commenting on my stuff. I looked at your profile. You look like you might have, the right skills for what we're hiring for. Is this something you'd be interested in? So there's been times where I've approached people too, especially if I know there's a specific need we're trying to fill on our team. Like right now, we're trying to hire a few key positions, and I've actually actively reached out to people that I can think of in my network that I know of. And so that's, back to your question of how do you break into the industry, or how do you further your career or make a shift if you want to go to a different consulting firm like Third Stage, then, reach out to someone, make contact and interact any way you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just having that confidence like Cam did, to start those conversations or ask questions, people are never going to balk at you. And if they do, it's a great non-culture fit, right? So I think that was a great recommendation. I liked when he talked kind of about lifestyle balance, because I think consulting roles, to his point, are so interesting, where it is a lifestyle, right? It's not so much a job. There's different hours that you may work. There's different travel when it comes to that. So I wondered if you might tell us how being a consultant may benefit or have some disparities in your kind of lifestyle balance, in knowing that you've been a career consultant, right?
Yeah, it's probably not honestly, I'm not the best resource for work-life balance advice, because I struggle with it, to be honest. It's gotten better since I've had kids. That's made it to where in some ways you have to find balance. In other ways you start to want to, which I won't get into my whole personal story, but it's taken me some time to get to the point where I want that balance now, but I didn't always want that. So, but I still, having said that, I still I still struggle with it because my tendency is to work as much as I can just because I like it and I love working. And I know most people, or a lot of people, don't want to do that, and they want to find less work. But I'm the opposite. So, but what I would say is, though, as far as just keeping your sanity and making sure you don't get out of balance, I mean, I think it's just important. In consulting, you work really hard, but one thing I really like about consulting is there is flexibility. You're not sitting at a desk from 8 to 5 every day doing the same thing. You're doing things that are totally different, which can be challenging, and it can be stressful if you're not cut out for it, or even if you are cut out for it, it can be stressful. So that's part of it. But the other part is that you have to be comfortable knowing that like last week I flew to Hanover, Pennsylvania, sort of in the middle of nowhere, and didn't get in until really late. It was after midnight. And so, you just have a weird schedule. You get in late and then you have early meetings, and then I had to fly out the next day. And, so there's times like that where it's a lot of work. But then I come home on a Friday or a Friday afternoon. I might take the afternoon off or go do something with the kids. And you can't always do that in other jobs. So I think you just have to sort of embrace the fact that you're going to work a lot. You're going to have weird hours, but then also embrace the fact that if it's, 2:00 on a Wednesday afternoon and you don't have calls for 2 more hours or nothing pressing you have to do right this minute, maybe you step out and go do something that, puts your mind at ease or something fun. So that's what I really like about consulting, is that sort of flexibility, and that helps with the work-life balance for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something, at least for our family, as both my husband and I consult, it's a great opportunity for us to be more involved in our young children's lives. But we also, we take calls at night, and we do work at night after bedtime and those types of things. So it's definitely something to be mindful of when you're looking at a consulting career. I'd also like to mention the ability to read a room, in that type of social interaction. My husband, who's an excellent consultant, seems to be able to do that in a professional sphere, but sometimes it doesn't translate to the home in reading a room.
Right.
All the time. Yeah, he can do it all the time with clients, but sometimes, like the other day, our 2-year-old was having a huge tantrum, and he comes in and he's like, "Are we ready to go?" And I'm like, "Are you serious?" After he just, got done, schmoozing clients on the phone. So,
Right.
compartmentalization is important, I think.
That's so funny you say that, because right before we went to film this podcast, I had a conversation with my wife, who is who's also our CFO. And I was she was asking me something, and I thought I had already explained it to her, so I got frustrated. And anyway, so she got mad and said, "Well, I hope you're not responsible for training other people in the company, because you're horrible at it." And I thought, wow. So I agree with you. I mean, I know and it's hard. You work with Adam, and I work with Kelly, my wife. So it can be hard to compartmentalize. But it is a good point, though, that I don't know about Adam, but for me, I don't know that I necessarily naturally have the skills required to be a good consultant, but I know when to turn them on. Like, I know when I have to flip the switch and be a certain way, or, to demonstrate certain parts of my personality that wouldn't normally come out. And so at home, the switch isn't always on. And so, you kind of get sideways sometimes, but you have to know that as a consultant. You have to know, like for me, I'm an extreme introvert, for example. If I just let myself be an introvert, I'd probably not be a very good consultant. So I have to sort of force myself to do things like this podcast on video, where people are watching and where I'm talking a lot, and I don't like talking a lot, or it's not in my nature to want to talk a lot, which may surprise people, but it's not my nature. So I have to force myself to do it. So it's just stuff like that, like recognizing where your personality weaknesses are, and trying to plug them or get better and solidify those.
Yeah, definitely. That awareness overall is key. And I think the consulting role kind of pushes you to really identify those pieces of your personality, and, where you need to talk and when you need to listen. Like we were talking about with Cam, and, being the consultant, therapist, mom, dad, those type of things, that they all take a different role. But, thank you for Cam too, for taking us through what that roadmap looks like. Because I think a lot of people are intimidated by the word consultant, and it's great to see someone like Cam, who is, young, a dad, and a remote worker that has seen success in the industry. So that was a great interview, and we definitely appreciate you and him sharing all of that insight with us.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, just to kind of close the loop on that point, is that Cameron didn't come into third stage with much experience, especially not in consulting. So, but it didn't matter, and he was actually worried about it. He didn't share that in the interview, but he was worried that he hasn't been a consultant, so how could he possibly succeed at this young? At the time we were much smaller and younger than we are now as an organization, and he was just worried that he wouldn't be able to contribute. But he was one of the ones, by the way, that he didn't come to me asking for a job. I actually asked him, "Have you ever thought about being a consultant? Because I think you'd be really good." And because he reminds me, there's parts of his personality that remind me of when I was that age, and I just saw a lot of that potential. And so I think those raw skills, there's raw skills that if you have those naturally and inherently, and he does, and I can't teach that to people, but if you have it naturally, then you're gonna learn the stuff you need to learn, and you're gonna figure it out. And those raw skills are much more important. And we get back to that chemistry and how do you put a team together. That's a really important part of it. So, it was a good discussion. I like hearing. It's always interesting to talk to any consultant in their career journey, but especially someone early on. I always love to hear the story of how they transition and adjust, and the drinking from the fire hose dynamic and the stress that comes along with it. But then you start to settle into a groove and whatnot. So that was good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And if our audience wants to hear any more of that, Eric and Cam, and I think it was Brian Lockaruba, but I'm not 100% sure, did a session at our Digital Stratosphere on just any questions about being a consultant. And we had huge engagement from the audience and great questions. So you can head over to our YouTube channel and see some more discussion too, from kind of a junior level, obviously a senior executive from Eric. And then we also had a senior manager on there. So kind of mid-tier in the career path. So great discussions there too, all very interesting. And I think the thing that I always love about third stage and going through kind of that almost mindful interview process is that everyone is so passionate about their overall career here. And when from the marketing side, whenever you do ask them to, hey, will you do a podcast on business operations or organizational change management? I don't think we've said that yet in this episode, which is, probably the first time we haven't talked about OCM, but they're always willing and want to engage in those conversations to help our audience and our clients. So I think that's just a great overall kind of lens into the business culture.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. So, well, good. Well, that's good stuff. Thanks for those great questions and for the all the other info you've shared in this episode, and certainly thanks to Kameron for being on the show, and thank you to the audience for being on the show and for asking questions. I know during Kameron's session we had some questions from the live audience when we recorded that interview. So thanks to everyone who's participating in that way. And again, you can find us every Wednesday on YouTube and all the social media, or on the podcast platforms, I should say. And be sure to follow us on social media too. We're particularly active on LinkedIn and YouTube, as well as Twitter and Instagram and others. But LinkedIn and YouTube are probably the two that we're most active in terms of publishing multiple things every day. And it's a great way to stay up to speed on consulting, digital transformation, business transformation in general. So I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Have a great week in the meantime.